Hey guys, this is Nick Bratton of Bratton Sports Performance. So over the last couple of years, I've talked a lot about our different acceleration positions, how we use them with our athletes, what we're looking for as we go through them, some of our cues. But one of the questions that I get often is, how do we establish who is going to do what acceleration? Where do we use them within our program? What is the purpose? And things like that. And so I wanted to take a moment to kind of outline what our progression is as we move through this and how and why we use each of these accelerations. So to start with, we always start with our wall drill. This is one of our most basic accelerations, and this is our opportunity to talk about how we get into that acceleration position, the importance of that position, and what we're looking for as we go through each stride, the foot position, the upper body position, the torso, the head, and how that's going to affect everything as we move from there. It's also an evaluation tool for us as well as coaches, because we get to see how our environment affects the athlete. And so as we're going through that wall drill, if we're seeing any movement within the body, if we're seeing any type of movement, especially within the upper body, some bouncing side to side, up and down, whether that shows us what our core strength looks like, but even with the lower body, what does it look like when our foot hits the ground? Do we have the integrity throughout the ankle in order to stay in that position? So we're going to start our acceleration work with our wall drill. From there, we're going to go into our sled drills. So we start out with a sled march, where basically we take our wall drill and we put that into motion. Now, by placing our athletes behind the sled, it keeps that movement a little bit slower so that we can walk beside them and continue to coach them, but keeps everything under control. From there, we move on to our sled run. Now, as we go through that run, it's going to be a similar pace on the sled, but our lower body is moving quicker. Our feet are moving quicker. We're still looking for that contact underneath the hips. When that foot comes up, it's in the loaded position with the foot underneath the thigh. So we're still going through those acceleration mechanics while again keeping the movement under control so we can continue to coach them as they're going through that drill. From there, we're going to start going into our actual acceleration work. So our tall falling starts and our athletic falling starts. Now, if any of this stuff seems foreign to you, or maybe the terminology is different than what you may be using, all of these videos are on our YouTube page, and so you can check those out for yourselves. But as we go through that athletic or the tall falling start into the athletic falling start, again, we're looking to get into the right position and maintain that posture as we go through that acceleration. So one of the most common things that I see as we go through this is, as soon as we go to take that first step, we lose integrity through our upper body, through our torso. We want to collapse and cave over as we go through that first step. So again, this is our opportunity to break down that skill, help show the athlete what we're looking for, but begin to put them into that motion and into that movement. With the athletic drill, all we're doing is we're taking that tall position and we're working down a little bit lower. We teach our accelerations the same way that we teach our clean progression. We start at the top and we work our way down. Again, my philosophy behind this is we spend all day in this upright position. This is what we're comfortable with, this is what we're used to, and so why not begin there and then work from that point? So we go into our athletic position. Now the difference here from the tall position is we're actually going to be able to drive out off the line in that first step. And that's one of the things that I focus on and I talk to my athletes about is I want you to get as far away from that starting position as you can in that first step. Keeping in mind, I don't want them to extend at the knee in that first stride. It really should be coming from that push leg, not necessarily because of a reach. From there, we're going to go into our staggered accelerations. This is what teaches our athletes to get into that unilateral position, to be able to shift their weight, and to be able to push, again, unilaterally, to be able to get a little more acceleration off that leg and reposition with the next foot. Next, we go into our single leg starts. And if you've seen our single leg video, then you kind of understand what we're looking for here. We really want to work on that power, that explosiveness through the step. This isn't necessarily a what I would call a sport-specific starting position. This isn't something that you're going to do within a sport. However, we're really looking for that physiological response. We want to be able to create as much power and push through that one leg that we can, so that anytime we do get into any type of competitive situation where we have to go through that acceleration off of one plant leg, we're able to do so. So we'll go through our single leg starts, and as we're going through each of these accelerations, we're continuing to build with our volume. So many of these first starts, the tall falling, the athletic falling, are going to be done over 5, maybe 10 yards. But as we progress into our staggered and single leg, we're going to go from 5 and 10 to 10 and 15. From that single leg start, we move into our kneeling starts. We do our top down kneeling first, followed by our bottom up. Again, if you've watched those videos, you understand why we separate them the way that we do based on that muscular activation and really just the difficulty level of the drill. But again, we're working our way down to that low position. We want to be strong out of that disadvantageous position. So we're focusing a lot on our posture as we get set up, our ability to extend through our hip, but again, our ability to maintain our integrity as we go through that drill. And finally, we move down to the top of the push-up position. So there are going to be many times that especially our contact-based agility athletes may be on the ground, they may be in a low position, and they've got to be able to have the fortitude, the wherewithal to be able to get up off the ground and into that acceleration. Not everything is going to be clean and pretty on the competition field, so we need to prepare them for those movements. So, as I alluded to, we're working through each of these drills, trying to master this position, while also increasing our volume as we go through it. Now, with each of these drills, we are going to progress the athlete as they are able to. Now, this is no matter the sport. This may be one of our football players, but it could also be any of our volleyball players. Even our swimmers will go through a number of these drills. Again, some of these are just based on the physiological response that we're looking for, not necessarily the sport specificity that you're going to get out of it. Now, one thing that we're going to incorporate, especially for our agility-based athletes, are going to be these lateral start accelerations. Now again, we are going to incorporate some of these with even our track athletes, our swimmers in off season, but sometimes that's more for just injury reduction than anything else. We're going to spend a lot of time here with our agility-based athletes all year round. So, once we've made it through most of these acceleration drills, we're going to start to work over to these lateral drills. We're going to work through a directional step, a crossover step, and a lateral kneeling start. Now again, these are going to be used for a little bit of a sport specificity standpoint. So when we talk about directional step, crossover step, one of the most common things that we hear about is baseball players from a base stealing standpoint, a 60-yard dash standpoint. But you can think about multiple other sports. So a linebacker in football, volleyball player coming across the net, there are going to be a number of athletes that are going to have to go through this. Even this lateral kneeling start. This is something I like to do a lot with specifically our tennis players. How often does a tennis player get into a lunge position and then have to re-accelerate to another side of the court or retreat backward? But again, you know, the physiological response to each of these is very important. Our ability to create that acceleration in a lateral plane or within that frontal plane while creating that force just off of one leg. So again, these are things that we're going to do with all of our athletes, but based on the sport, we're going to spend a different amount of time within it. We're going to accelerate for a different period, and we may be focusing on different things. As we're going through each of these drills, I'm going to be trying to set up the scenario for our athletes. So for our basketball players, okay, we are transitioning from the offensive to the defensive side of the court. You are following your player down the court with the ball. You begin with that crossover step into a crossover run, but as you feel that other player begin to separate, now we have to transition into a sprint itself. But as we get to that defensive side of the court, well, now we're going to go from the sprint back into a crossover run and ultimately back into a shuffle. And so trying to create those scenarios and help those athletes to visualize how we're going to use it, why we're going to use it, and how it puts us in the position that we need to be in. So I hope that this image here